Good day. I'd like to go over a midterm review presentation now for you. It hopefully will help you prepare and be ready to take the midterm when it goes live. I'm going to go through each of these parts. There's 19 total slides in this presentation. Some of them are redundant, trying to force the issue of helping you to understand and um, emphasize some of the points. Repetition is a good way of trying to do that. So as I go through these, make some notes if you wish. Again, this presentation will be up and available for you to review, as well as these PowerPoints will be available just like all the other presentations in the class. Okay, so first off, let's go through the topics that are going to be on the test. Straightforward. These are the topics that you see on the slide that we covered during the first half of the course. Writing and grammar, advising, sports sociology. You saw a presentation by Dr. Butcher. Sports psychology, you saw a presentation by Dr. Sachs. Motor behavior and feet were both presentations done by myself. And so you have those slides with the notes as well as the material covered during the video presentation. All that content is valid and susceptible to being on the exam. Um, One of the notes I want to make at this point is that the advising, sports, social, psych, motor behavior, and feet are only on the midterm. They are not on the final. It is not a comprehensive final exam. Writing and grammar, however, since it crosses all subject and disciplinary lines, as well as it never goes out of style from first grade or kindergarten, technically, I guess, um, through college, through life, it never expires. So consequently, writing and grammar will be both on the midterm and on the final. But for now, let's just focus on the midterm, and it will cover these four topics. And to go over the type of test that it's going to be, it is a recognition test. As such, the answer is in front of you. You can see if you add up the numbers there on the left-hand side, 18 and 10 and 12 and 30 totals 70 total test items. I'm not saying questions because the 30 true false statements are not technically questions, they're statements, and I'll talk about those when we get there. So consequently, there's 70 total items, and the answer is on the page as part of the item itself, and that's why it's called a recognition. The answer is there, but you have to recognize it. Now let me talk about that in a minute. Sometimes people or students would like to use the term, oh, you're tricky. Well, yes, that's the object of a test that is going to include the answer. If this is what was called a constructive response test, where I gave you sort of an indicator, said list 5 grammatical errors that are commonly found in most students' writings, you would have to think of it all by yourself and write or construct the answer. In this case, the answer is already there, and you have to find it amongst the other options that are not correct. So the difference is, are you a cardinal in the backyard of a snow-covered pine tree where your red color just stands out brilliantly against the white background, in which case it's not really obvious? Sort of like if I asked the question that said 3 plus 4 equals 7, 70, 700, or 7,000. See, they all have a 7 in them, but it doesn't take a genius to realize that since 3 plus 4, they're both under 5, it can't be a double-digit number. Therefore, the other ones really are not viable. And so you don't have to know a whole lot probably to get that question answered correctly. So it's like that red cardinal on a white pine tree. It's so blatantly obvious, it's not funny. However, if instead it's more like a chameleon on a fig tree where people are going green, brown, they're looking at the different uh, background and style and configurations. If you had motor behavior, we'd call it figure ground identification. But you know, that chameleon is hiding. It's there, but it's not meant to jump out at you like that red cardinal does. And so, therefore, the answer in this case is hidden amongst things that if you don't really know the answer, it might not seem so obvious to you. And so it's not so much being tricky as trying to build a correct question so that it differentiates between those who know the information and those who don't. Because if you don't know the information, you're not supposed to get it right. So anyway, hopefully you'll view that a little differently. So anyway, looking at this 18 multiple selection on all the different topics, no one here or there, but I have two parts that are pretty defined, so I wanted to separate them out. Instead of just telling you that I have 40 multiple choice items, I have 18 multiple selections that typically have 4 choices. So that means if you don't know, you have a 25% chance of getting it right. 4 choices, 4 into 100 is 25. You have 10 two-part multiple selections. Now, 2 parts means you really have a 50-50 chance of guessing it right if you don't know. But basically, there's going to be a statement, and you'll see one of these on the sample quiz that is going live later, and I'll talk about that later in this presentation. You probably saw it on the email announcement today. But there are only 2 parts, sports psych, sports soc, and as such, you have to try to differentiate, does that statement, is it something that a sports sociologist would probably study or something that a sports psychologist would study? Okay. And again, you'll have a sample of that in the practice quiz. The 12 5-part multiple selection, uh, the 5 parts that you're going to have to select amongst is you're going to be given a sentence. And again, there's a sample one of these on the review quiz, but you're going to be given a sentence and then you read the sentence and you try to determine, is the noun pronoun agreement correct? If it's not, that's your choice because you're trying to find the error. Okay, you're trying to find the error in the sentence. If there is one. If there isn't, then your option is number 5 or E, I think is what it, because it's A, B, C, D, E. E says no error. But the 4 error possibilities are noun pronoun agreement, subject verb agreement, spelling error, or the wrong word usage error. So there are 4 possible errors, and if there are none, then you pick E, no error. But let me also explain a caveat here. If I use the wrong word, that is not the same as misspelling. Okay, so for example, let's take the word there, T-H-E-R-E. And if I said, Mommy shouted, look over there at that huge buffalo. But I spelled there, T-H-E-I-R. That is a wrong word usage because T-H-E-I-R is a correct spelling of a word, but it's the wrong word. It's the wrong there because it ought to be T-H-E-R-E. So in that case, you would say it's the wrong word usage versus it's a misspelled word because it did spell a word. I'm never going to fudge that line. You know, it's going to be pretty obvious. If it spells a word then it is not a misspelling of the word that you thought it ought to be. So in this case, T-H-E-I-R is the wrong word. It ought to be T-H-E-R-E. Okay. If I did say their sister was selected prom queen and I spelled their T-H-I-E-R, now that's not the wrong there because T-H-I-E-R doesn't spell a word. So in that case, I spelled their T-H-E-I-R incorrectly because I transposed the I and the E. Okay, hopefully that makes sense to you, right? And then 30 true false statements. Now let me tell you a little bit about true false. You never try to prove a true false statement true. You only ever try to prove it false. And the absence of it being false means it's true. Excuse me. Almost sort of like the law. You're found not guilty. You're never really found innocent. Okay, so the defense is trying to defend the person from being found guilty, where the prosecution is trying to find the person as having been at fault or guilty, same as the false statement. Okay, they broke the law. That's what they're trying to prove. In the absence of breaking the law, they didn't, and therefore they're innocent. So here you try to prove a true false statement false. In the absence of being false, it then is true. Okay, because sometimes things are true sometimes and false other times, and that would be a false statement. Can't come back to me and say, oh, but this is when it's true. And you go, well, that's nice, but here's when it's false. And therefore, according to the laws of logic, if it's false once, it's a false statement. Okay. Now, again, every question in this exam is based on what was covered in this class. Don't come back to me and tell me that this teacher or that teacher told you something different. That this test is not for their classes, it's for this class. So you have to go by what was covered in this class. Okay? Next, we already went over this, what you learned in the first half of this summer session, and that's it. There's nothing on the second half in the first half, and only writing and grammar is on the second half from this first half. Okay, now let me explain the scary part of this test. Besides it being a midterm, which is scary enough, it's different than any other test you've probably ever taken. And the reason for that is because of the potential of cheating. Okay, it is an online test, which means unlike a fall spring in-class semester exam where we have people proctoring that will make sure you're not looking things up on your phone, or to make sure you're not, glancing over one side or the other to a neighbor's test or something like that. It's really hard to protect the integrity of the test and the course in an online manner. So in order to do so, we've had to change it up a little bit. First of all, the questions that come up for you will be different than the questions that come up for someone else. While they're all the same questions, they're going to come up in different orders or in a random fashion. I do not control, okay, which questions come up. Unfortunately, here's one of the issues, as is very critical. If you get kicked off of the test during the test because of your connection, I can let you go back in and reset your timer so that you only have the time left that you had left when you got kicked off. The problem is, since the test is generated randomly, I cannot control whether or not you get the same question that you've already answered before if it comes up again. So we'll talk about that a little bit at the end, but that makes it a little bit trickier. Okay, so anyway, what's going to happen is, while the questions will come up randomly, one question at a time, the style of this test is what is called a power test. That means it is designed so that no one, and I repeat, no one, should get done. Let that sink in a minute. Yes, that's scary. The salvation part is that the grades are not based on the total number of questions on the test. There are 70 questions. No one will get done, so no one is getting graded out of 70 questions. Okay, so since no one is getting done, that part is the same for everyone. What is not the same is how fast you take the test. If you do choose to try to start looking up answers, you're going to cut into your time tremendously, and you're going to get less done than you would have if you didn't look something up, just guessed and went on. Okay. Now, yes, you could choose not to read the questions and just start answering, you know, questions as fast as you can, trying to get them all done. And you might be able to answer them all in 15 minutes. But not having read the question just to get to the end probably means you're not going to get a whole lot right either. So I would not recommend this approach. Read the question, answer it, move on. Read the question, answer it, move on. Don't try to give a whole lot of time to it. Go with your gut. If you don't know, guess and move on. You don't get points taken off for guessing. Okay, we're not going to subtract the wrong from the right, which is another type of test they used to do with the SATs. If you got 1 point for getting it right, you got minus a half a point for getting it wrong. They did not want you guessing. In this case, I don't care if you guess. Move on, move through, get as much done as you can. Okay, so since this test was not designed, you're not going to be graded, as I said, against the total. That would be unfair. However, you will be graded based on the average score of the test and the standard deviation. That will give you a position on the normal curve line, with the average being in the middle, and then the standard deviation going up, plus and minus. And then you will, if you're at 1.5 standard deviations above the mean, you're going to be up and around the B range. 2 standard deviations above the mean, you're going to be up and around the A range. Okay. And the other way on the other side. But if everyone gets the same score within that 1 standard deviation, which is rare but possible, then that means everyone would get a C on the first half of the scoring of this test. However, notice here it also says that an adjustment, okay, is going to be made, an adjustment based on the highest score. So again, if all those scores are lumped together, and then I do the second part of what is read here and I adjust it based on the highest score, then all those scores will move collectively together up, because I always take the highest score and put that score in the middle of the A range. And so if all the other scores are around it, then that means they're going to be pulled up also. I've been doing this for 3 years. Believe me when I say no one has ever complained about how the scoring of the test takes place. They might still complain about the questions. They might still complain about not knowing what the question meant because they don't read well enough, whatever. The point being that no one has ever complained over the grading of the test, which is what people initially, when they go, I'm not going to get done, I'm going to be scared, that's not right. That's not usually the issue. After all the test scores come in, I then go through, create the curve and adjustment as explained here, and then I post a video explaining the grades. Okay, that will happen again, and so you'll be able to see how it all plays out. So hopefully, likewise, you'll understand that. Okay, again, you're going to have 15 minutes to complete the test once you start. So consequently, 15 minutes, 70 questions. You can see that we were giving you 3 questions for 1 minute. So if you do the math, 3 into 70 is what? 1, 2, about 23 minutes. So you can see you're about 8 minutes short of having the same amount of time. So it will push you to keep moving. All right. Once you submit an answer, it doesn't allow you to backtrack and change your answers, so get it right the first time and keep moving. I turn backtracking off so that you don't get caught up trying to do that. You will certainly waste time because you can only click through a question at a time. It's not the same thing on a paper and pencil test when you can just turn the page over and go back to question 23, even though you were at question 54. To go back to 23 from 54, you'd have to hit the back arrow, 21 times? That's a big waste of time. So I don't allow you to backtrack. It only allows you to go forward. So guess and move on. And usually your gut answer is more right than wrong. Okay. Now let's look at the test itself. You have 24 hours to take it. You have 15 minutes to take it once you start, but you have a 24-hour window in which to take it. The test is going to go live on Wednesday at 6 o'clock in the evening, and it will stay live until Thursday at 6 o'clock in the evening. So if you want to take it in the morning, you want to take it at night, whatever, it's up to you. Once you start, you have 15 minutes to complete it. So if you do the math, you do not want to start the test after 5:45 Thursday evening or late afternoon, however you want to describe it. Okay? Because if you start the test at 5:50 and the test goes down at 6, you're only giving yourself 10 minutes to take the test. All right? So hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so be careful. If you have any questions, make sure you get a hold of me beforehand. Next, I've said this before, if you don't know the answer, guess and keep on moving. It's a combination of how many you get right and how many you get done. Obviously, the more you get done, the more you can get right, but don't give up getting them right in the interest of just getting as many done as you can. It's a balance between the two. Okay, you don't have a whole lot of time to ponder one test question. Read it, answer it, and move on. Again, how many you get right, how many you get done. The more answers, the more questions you answer, the better chance you have to get a higher score. Okay, and so again, your midterm result is a combination of the number of items answered and the number correct. Very, very important. Now, why is this a style of testing? Like I said, it will probably really cut back on the potential of cheating. Also, because your score is being based on other people's scores. If you help someone and they get a significantly higher score than you, that will actually hurt your score. So you certainly don't want to help someone else do better than you. Because remember I said, we look at the mean and then we look at the difference between the mean and the standard deviation of your score against that mean. And so if you give someone else the answers and they score higher and you're down here, then the mean is going to be in between and you're going to be on the other side of that mean. So don't go there. Okay, that's really not wise on your part. The other point is that in life, being correct is good, but if it takes you all day to get something right, you're probably not very marketable on a job. Think about the person that can make, and let's go to a donut shop, someone who can make 5 dozen donuts and make really nice donuts. Someone else in the same amount of time can only make 2 dozen donuts. And while they might be just a little bit nicer, they're not that much nicer that the donut shop owner isn't going to say, I'd rather have this person be able to make 5 dozen donuts that are good donuts versus this person who's doing 2 dozen and maybe they're a little bit better, but I'm only getting 2 dozens worth of sales out of him versus this other person. So there's always this trade-off between good and the quantity or the amount you get done. And so that person who can get more done and get it done right is more valuable and more marketable. So there is value in this. Someone who takes, when you're going on to grad school, and someone who was taking 6 to 8 credits a semester typically isn't very marketable, even if they have a 3.7 GPA, because at grad school, they're saying you're taking 18 credits a semester and you've only ever shown me that you can do 6 to 8. I don't know if you can handle graduate school. So it's not so far-fetched, again, for this style of testing. Okay, finally, getting to the end here. I've also posted a sample 5-item quiz, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, specifically so you can really see that psych-soc 2-part multiple choice and the writing grammar 5-part multiple choice. Those are different type of questions than maybe you've seen before, so you really want to take a look at those, okay? You have 2 minutes to take this 5-item quiz, so obviously you have more time than the normal quiz you had. There are more items, but you also have twice as many minutes. So the time constraint is not that authentic compared to what the midterm is going to be like. But again, it is a real quiz, so I don't want you to have to feel strained and stressed over taking the quiz. All right. But you do want to look at that and take that. You want to take that before the exam. The quiz goes up, let's see, it goes up at 4 o'clock on Wednesday morning, and it stays live throughout the entire exam because someone might decide they want to take the quiz Thursday morning and then take the exam Thursday afternoon. That's perfectly fine. You have a lot of flexibility here. At the end of the day, make sure you have a good connection. All right. And that's what this last part is about. Try to use a hardwired computer connection. Go to a community college, go to one of the Temple branch campuses. If you're on main campus, go over to the computer center. That way you know you have the best connection possible. I am not staying up 24 hours once the exam goes live. I typically go to bed somewhere around midnight and typically get up somewhere around 7. So if you decide to take the exam between those 2 time periods, you can, but if something happens and you email me, don't expect me to get back to you right away because I'm not having an alarm go off every time I get an email over in the middle of the night. So when I get up the next morning, if I see that you've been kicked off, I will reset your timer. And so if you used 5 minutes of the 15, I'll reset it to 10 and give you 10 minutes more to take it. But if you remember in the beginning, I said since the questions are generated randomly, it might give you some questions that you already took. Since I have those answers, you can, if you wish, to just skip it and move on to the next question. Say, I already had that one. Skip it and move on to the next one, and I'll take your first answer. If you decide to answer it again, I'm only going to take your second one and not your first one. I'm not going to take both of them and say, oh, you got it right, you got it wrong, so I'm going to count it twice. That wouldn't be fair. Okay, so I will try to stay connected to my computer during that 24-hour period, except when I'm sleeping. And if something happens, hopefully it won't, try to stay hardwired. The only students who have ever had a problem testing have all been using Wi-Fi. They all use the same excuse. I didn't think it would happen to me. Forewarning, please don't go there unless you're feeling risky. Okay, that's about it. If you have any questions, make sure you ask them before. After the test goes down on Thursday evening at 6 p.m., I will immediately pull everything together, do the calculations, and post the explanation of the midterm so that you'll have all that information. Okay, thank you very much. Hopefully this was helpful. Again, all the best, and if you're ever on campus, stop on in to see me, although I'm not back until the end of August. There's no need for me to be on main campus during this. I can do this from home and it works out well. All right, thank you. Hope you had a good 4th of July. Didn't eat too much watermelon, hamburgers, hot dogs, and all the other stuff, but did see some nice fireworks. You take care now, and thanks for being part of the course. Bye-bye.